Mr. Duffy spoke first in making his comments. Ms. O'Connor will get to answer first the question, and then Mr. Duffy will get the chance to ask the identical question. On January 1st, 2011, there was $69 or $89, I forget which, in our rainy day fund circle. That has been balanced. There's now about almost $1 billion surplus, primarily by cutting local assistance or assistance to local government and schools. What would be your plans for that $1 billion surplus? Would you stay the course? Would you redirect that? What would be your approach to dealing with that money and the cuts that you made?
Minute and a half.
Sure.
Can you do that?
Sure. Well, I agree that there should be money in the bank. I also don't feel, just like what I said in my opening remarks, that we should balance the budget on the shoulders or the backs of our local communities and our local schools. Shifting that tax burden and that responsibility from the state to our local communities is a decision then that we have to make come November in Dublin and in Worthington as to whether or not support a tax levy on our properties. You know, should the money remain in the bank? I think there should be some money in the bank, but I also think that money should be reinvested in our communities. Teachers in the classroom, policemen, firemen, safety, infrastructure to our communities. You know, and you look at some of the communities in eastern Ohio who are, you know, on the cutting edge of the fracking business. You know, so that money should be used to reinvest in those communities, because what's going to happen when those resources are gone? You know, I say to my kids when we have sweets and treats in the house, when it's gone, it's gone. I understand that. I understand that. But we also need to prepare those communities, and then we also need to invest in our local communities now and what's best for us right now. Thank you.
Right.
The amount of money that we have in the rainy day fund is actually much smaller than it used to be. In 2008, during the Strickland administration, we at one point had $1.1 billion. And actually the number that we started with in January of 2011 was 89 cents. And it was doubled to $1.78 by Brian Ferreira, who's the Senate Finance Director, who took 89 cents out of his own pocket and gave it to the state treasury to make a point. And the point was that if you don't have a cushion, you have the kind of cuts that you have right now happening. You know, this was, I hate to say it, electoral politics. Somebody was running for governor. They didn't want to make structural changes that could make it a gradual transition for the state of Ohio. They relied on billions of dollars in federal stimulus money. They relied on billions of dollars in state one-time money. That's called a fiscal cliff. And so when the new administration comes in, whether or not it had been in the old administration or whether it's a completely new administration, they probably would have had the same choice. And that choice was between not passing cuts down to the locals and raising some kind of tax at the state level, or cutting something else in state government. But as I've done presentations in the community, I've talked about most of our budget, the largest piece is Medicaid, or families and children. The second largest piece is K through 12 education. The third largest piece is higher education. And after that, it's general government. Everything else is just a small piece of the pie. And you almost have to zero it out completely to balance the budget. So that leaves only one real conclusion, and that is, if you don't want cuts at the local level, you're really talking about some form of state tax income increase. And probably an income tax, because that would be the only tax that would be progressive. And so if that's the case, you know, let's talk about what's best for Dublin. Dublin gets 11.6 cents back on the school funding formula. You could spend $1,000 in new taxes at the state level, and you only get 116 for your schools. Does that make sense? Does that support teachers in schools? Does that support an education for our children? The fact is that the existing school funding formula is highly redistributive. It treats school districts like Dublin as if you're rich. And sure, there might be some successful people in Dublin, but not everyone here is successful. But whether you make $20,000 or whether you make $200,000, every dollar that you send the state of Ohio only comes back at 11.6 cents. So I encourage you to think about this in terms of lessers of evils. You know, we didn't really have a choice. We had an $8 billion shortfall. We had 89 cents in the rainy day fund. Is it better for Dublin to be able to have local control, deal with a recession when it occurs, be able to get better value for your dollar, and be able to get more money into the classroom? Or would you rather send it to the state so they can be